Everything you have read about building wealth skips the ugly part, the part where it actually feels bad while you are doing it. I started at zero. No inheritance, no trust fund, no rich relatives slipping me money under the table. What pulled me out was not luck, and it was not some secret nobody else knows. It came down to 10 habits, and almost everyone abandons them because they feel uncomfortable, unglamorous, and a little brutal. At least, that is how they feel in the beginning. Stay with me, because the discomfort is the entire point. A few years before any of this worked, I was the person checking a bank account with my stomach in a knot. Rent would clear, and there was almost nothing left behind it. The math was simple and humiliating. More money came in than I ever managed to keep. So before we touch a single habit, understand this. None of them require a high income, a finance degree, or some personality you were not born with. What they require is that you do specific, uncomfortable things that your own brain will fight you on every step of the way. I also want to set your expectations honestly, because this is where the no sugarcoating part really begins. None of these habits will make you rich this year or next year. Anyone promising you that is selling you something. What these habits do is bend the trajectory of your entire financial life by a few degrees. And a few degrees, held steady over decades, is the difference between scraping by forever and quietly becoming the wealthiest person at your own family reunion. The work is slow, it is boring, and it is almost entirely invisible to the people around you. That invisibility is exactly why it works. Let us start with the one that changed everything. Number 1, pay yourself first, automatically, before you spend a single dollar. Here is the unglamorous reality about budgeting. Willpower is a terrible savings plan. You promise yourself you will save whatever is left at the end of the month, and at the end of the month, there is never anything left. There is always a dinner out, a sale you could not pass up, a thing you suddenly decided you needed. The problem was never your discipline. What actually trips you up is that you left yourself in charge of the decision at the exact moment you are weakest, which is when the money is sitting right there in your account, begging to be spent. So you remove yourself from that decision entirely. On the day your paycheck lands, a fixed amount moves into investing before your eyes ever see it, before the spending part of your brain even has a chance to wake up and object. Take someone like Brandon, an ordinary worker on a modest salary. He sets up an automatic transfer of $400 on every single payday, straight into a low-cost index fund, and then he treats that money as if it never existed. At a long-run average of around 7% a year, that quiet little habit grows to nearly $500,000 across 30 years. Now sit with that, because he never actually had $500,000 to invest. Out of his own pocket, he contributed around $144,000. Everything above that line is compounding, doing the heavy lifting while he slept, while he worked, while he lived his life and forgot the transfer was even happening. Let the same habit run for 40 years instead of 30, and that ordinary $400 a month crosses a full $1 million. Same person, same paycheck. One decision made once and then automated forever. The brutal part is honest, so I will be honest. For the first 2 months, paying yourself first feels exactly like a pay cut. Your spending money is genuinely smaller and your brain hates it. And then something strange happens. You adjust. Your life quietly reshapes itself around the money that is actually in front of you, and the discomfort just fades. The pay cut feeling disappears. The wealth it is building does not. That is the entire trade. And almost nobody is willing to sit through those uncomfortable first 2 months to get it. Number 2, treat your employer match like a pay cut you refuse to accept. This habit is about the closest thing to free money that exists anywhere in the real world, and a stunning number of people walk straight past it every payday. In 2026, you are allowed to put up to $24,500 of your own salary into a 401k. Most employers will match some portion of what you contribute, which means that for every dollar you put in up to a certain limit, they drop in free dollars right beside it. If your company matches the first few percent of your pay, you are looking at a guaranteed instant return the moment your money lands. Walking away from that is not caution. Walking away from that is turning down a raise you already earned with your own hours. Colette sat next to a coworker who skipped the match for years. His reasoning sounded responsible on the surface. Retirement felt far away, the paycheck felt tight, and he wanted every dollar now. She did the exact opposite. Her employer kicked in roughly $200 a month on top of her own contributions, and she made absolutely sure she captured every cent of it. That match alone, just the free portion her company added, compounded into around $250,000 over 30 years. Read that slowly. $250,000, and not one penny of it came out of her own salary. Her coworker, doing the same job for the same company, left every dollar of that on the table because the future felt too far away to matter. The kind of number that makes accountants cry, and he simply gave it away. So before you optimize anything fancy, before you chase returns or pick funds or read a single hot take, you capture every dollar of match your employer offers. There is no investment on earth that hands you an immediate, guaranteed return like a dollar-for-dollar match does. It is the rare moment where the system is openly offering you money, and your only job is to not refuse it. The objection I hear most is that the paycheck is already too tight to spare anything for retirement, and I understand it completely because I lived it. Here is what makes the match different from every other line in your budget. The money your employer adds is a return you earn the instant you contribute, before the market does anything at all. Put in $1, get $1 dropped beside it, and you have already doubled your money on day one, which is a result no stock picker on the planet can promise you. One quiet warning worth knowing is that many matches vest over time, meaning you have to stay at the company a certain number of years before that free money is fully yours to keep. So check your plan, learn your vesting schedule, and do not walk away from a job and leave thousands of unvested dollars behind without realizing it. Number 3, kill high-interest debt like it is on fire before you invest another cent. This one stings because the internet loves to scream at you to start investing early, and that advice is genuinely true, with one enormous exception sitting right in front of it. If you are carrying a balance on a credit card, you are already in a race, and your opponent never sleeps, never takes a day off, and never shows you mercy. The average new credit card in 2026 charges almost 24%. Across the country, Americans are now holding more than $1.2 trillion in card debt. That interest compounds against you in exactly the same merciless way that investing compounds for you, just aimed in the opposite direction, draining you a little more every single day. Run the actual numbers and the cruelty of it becomes impossible to ignore. Darius is sitting on $6,000 of card debt at 22%. He pays a steady $150 a month, and he feels responsible about it because at least he is paying something. That debt takes him more than 6 years to finally clear, and along the way he hands the bank almost $5,000 in pure interest, money that bought him nothing. Now imagine the same Darius clawing together $300 a month instead, even though it hurts. That identical debt vanishes in a little over 2 years, and the interest he pays drops to around $1,500. By doubling his payment, he saves himself roughly $3,500 and 4 years of his life chained to that balance. Here is why this has to come before investing. Paying off a card charging 22% is the same in pure math as earning a guaranteed 22% return on your money with zero risk and zero uncertainty. No stock, no fund, no clever trade reliably beats that, year after year, with any kind of safety. So while it feels backward to pause your investing to attack debt, the numbers are screaming the opposite. Clear the high-interest debt first. Everything that comes after it gets dramatically easier because you finally stop running uphill. What makes this debt so dangerous is how quietly it works. The interest never sends you a dramatic bill you can react to. It just slips a little more onto your balance every single day, a few dollars at a time, small enough that you stop noticing it entirely. That is exactly how a manageable balance turns into a chain that follows you for years. So when you attack it like an emergency, because in slow motion, that is precisely what it is. Throw every spare dollar at the highest rate card first, while paying the minimums on the rest, and watch that balance fall. The relief you feel when the last one hits zero is something no purchase has ever come close to matching. And the money you were bleeding in interest becomes money you finally get to keep. Number 4. Build the boring emergency fund before you touch the exciting investments. Nobody has ever bragged about a savings account at a party. There is no thrill in it, no chart climbing up and to the right, no story worth telling. And it is the single thing standing between you and watching every other habit collapse the first time life decides to punch you in the mouth. Without a cash cushion, one transmission failure or one surprise medical bill forces you straight into the worst possible move, which is selling your investments at the exact wrong moment, or reaching for a credit card and quietly undoing all the work you just did in number 3. What you are aiming for is roughly 3 to 6 months of your real expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account where you cannot impulsively spend it on a Tuesday afternoon. And the good news in 2026 is that those accounts are finally paying you something that actually matters. The strongest high-yield accounts right now are offering somewhere around 4 to 5%. Compare that to the national average savings rate, which is sitting at barely a third of 1%. The rate your big traditional bank is quietly handing most people without a word. Mara keeps $21,000 of emergency money in a high-yield account earning 4%. That cushion throws off more than $800 a year just for sitting there, just for existing. Park the exact same money in a typical big bank savings account, and it earns around $80. Same cash, same instant access, same federal protection, and more than 10 times the return, purely because she refused to leave it in the lazy account her bank was hoping she would never question. The brutal lesson here is patience. You build this boring pile first, before the fun investing starts, because this is the thing that lets you stay invested through every storm without panic selling. The emergency fund is not the opposite of building wealth. It is the floor that keeps your wealth standing. How big the cushion should be depends honestly on your life, and this is where you have to be truthful with yourself. If your income is steady and your job feels secure, 3 months of expenses might be enough to let you sleep at night. If you work on commission, freelance, or carry the whole household on one paycheck, you probably want closer to 6 months, maybe more. The goal is not to optimize this money for growth, and that trips people up constantly. This particular pile has exactly one job, which is to be boring, safe, and instantly available on the worst day of your year. You are not trying to get rich with your emergency fund. You are trying to make sure that when life goes wrong, and it will, you never have to undo a single one of the other 9 habits to survive it. Number 5, refuse lifestyle creep and bank your raises instead of wearing them. This is the silent killer of the whole list, and the reason it is so dangerous is that it dresses up as success. You earn a raise, and within a single month, that bigger paycheck has quietly grown a bigger apartment, a newer car payment, a slightly nicer version of everything you already owned. The extra money never once reaches your future because your present swallowed it the instant it arrived. You walk around genuinely feeling like you are doing better, and your net worth has not moved a single inch. That is the trap. It feels like progress while it functions like a treadmill, and you can run on it for decades without ever getting anywhere. The habit that breaks the cycle is simple to say and genuinely uncomfortable to live. When your income goes up, your spending stays flat, and the entire difference gets invested before it can attach itself to some new monthly bill. Andre landed a raise worth about $800 a month. Someone in his position would normally absorb the whole thing into a nicer lifestyle without thinking twice about it. He let himself enjoy half of it, a real reward he could feel, and he automatically invested the other $400 before it could disappear. That single redirected $400 a month grows into more than $320,000 over 25 years. His coworkers spent their raises on cars that lost a chunk of their value the moment they rolled off the lot, on apartments that impressed visitors for an evening, on upgrades that felt amazing for about a week and then simply became the new normal they could no longer feel at all. Andre turned his raise into a small fortune that nobody around him could see, and the fact that it was invisible is precisely why it survived. You cannot envy, copy, or pressure someone out of wealth you never knew they had. The discipline of staying the same while your income quietly grows is one of the most unglamorous, unsexy, quietly potent moves you will ever make. We are halfway through the list now, and the next habit is the one that quietly separates the people who genuinely build wealth from the people who only ever talk about it. Let me show you where most of the noise in investing actually comes from, and why blindly following it costs ordinary people a fortune. Number 6. Buy the index, not the story. Everybody secretly wants to be the person who picked the one stock that exploded. The hot tip from a coworker, the company everyone at work is suddenly buzzing about, the trade that turns a little money into a lot of money overnight while you sleep. It is a thrilling story, and the unglamorous reality is that consistently beating the broad market is brutally hard, even for full-time professionals who do nothing else with their lives. Every time you chase one of those stories, you pay for it in fees, in taxes, and in bad timing. And those costs hide so quietly that you barely notice them leaving. A simple low-cost fund that just owns the entire market lets you ride the whole thing upward without betting your future on a single guess. The price of ignoring this is not small, and the math makes it concrete. Priscilla starts with $10,000 and adds $500 a month for 30 years. Riding a broad index fund at around 7% a year, she lands somewhere near $685,000. Her friend has identical discipline, the same starting amount, the same $500 a month, the same 30 years, but she chases active picks and pricey funds that quietly drag her returns down by about 2% every year. That tiny-sounding 2% leak means her friend ends with roughly $460,000 instead. The gap between them is more than $220,000. Gone. Invisible. Paid out a thin sliver at a time, year after year, never once showing up as a single painful charge she could see and react to. I want to be clear and responsible here because this matters. I am not a financial advisor, and none of this is a plan built for your specific situation. What I am describing is general information and a pattern that has held up remarkably well over long stretches of history. The expensive, exciting, story-driven approach loses to the boring index far more often than anyone wants to admit. And it loses precisely because it is exciting. Wealth, it turns out, is mostly built by people who were willing to be bored on purpose for a very long time. And the hidden tax on chasing stories is not only money. It is your attention and your peace of mind. The person hunting the next hot pick refreshes their app 12 times a day, rides every headline up and down, and slowly trains themselves to panic sell at the worst possible moment, when the market dips and fear takes over. The index owner barely looks. She set up the automatic contribution months ago and went back to living her life. And that boredom is not a side effect of her strategy. The boredom is the strategy. And it is the reason she keeps her money invested long enough for the compounding to actually do its work. If these first 6 habits have already changed the way you see your own money, take a moment to subscribe, because everything on this channel is built to keep doing exactly that, week after week. Now look closely at the mistake hiding inside the next one, because it quietly hands money straight back to the government. Number 7. Fill the tax-advantaged accounts before you ever touch a regular one. Paying the government more than you legally owe is a choice, and an enormous number of people make that choice every year without ever realizing they made it. The tax code openly hands you special accounts designed to shelter your money from taxes, and those accounts sit unused all the time, ignored by people who then wonder why their savings grow so slowly. In 2026, you can put $7,500 into a Roth account, where your money grows for decades and eventually comes back out without you owing a cent of tax on all those gains. If you happen to be on a qualifying high-deductible health plan, a health savings account lets you contribute $4,400 as an individual, and that particular account carries something genuinely rare, a triple advantage. The money goes in before tax. It grows untaxed the entire time, and it comes back out untaxed when you spend it on medical costs. Tobias treats his Roth like a bill he is legally required to pay, completely non-negotiable. He funds it fully every single year, which works out to around $625 a month. Across 35 years at a long-run 7%, that one account grows past $1.1 million. And an enormous chunk of that growth is money the tax collector never gets to lay a finger on. Noelle does the same thing with her health savings account, refusing to spend it down on small expenses and instead quietly building it into a second retirement fund, hiding in plain sight. Same dollars going in, wildly different outcomes coming out. And the only difference is that they use the buckets the system already built and labeled for them. So the order matters. You fill these protected accounts first. You squeeze every dollar of tax advantage out of them that the rules allow. And only then do you move on to an ordinary taxable account. Doing it in the wrong order is one of the most common and most expensive quiet mistakes there is, and almost no one ever sees the bill, because the cost shows up as taxes they simply never needed to pay. If the alphabet soup of account names makes your eyes glaze over, here is the simple order to remember. Start by grabbing the full employer match, because that is free money and it always wins. Then attack any high-interest debt, because no account beats a guaranteed 22%. After that, build the emergency cushion so nothing can knock you off course. Then pour into the tax-protected accounts, the Roth and the health savings account, until you have used up what the rules allow for the year. Only after all of that does the regular taxable account come into play. Follow that sequence and you are quietly doing what most high earners never bother to learn, which is keeping the maximum amount of your own money working for you instead of leaking it away in interest and taxes you were never required to pay in the first place. Number 8. Start now, not when you finally feel ready. This is the habit I genuinely wish someone had grabbed me by the shoulders and screamed about earlier, because the cost of waiting is almost impossible to believe until you watch it laid out side by side. Time is the one single ingredient you can never buy back at any price, and it quietly does far more of the work than the size of your contributions ever will. People keep telling themselves they will start investing once they earn a little more, once the debt is finally gone, once life calms down and the timing feels right. Life never fully calms down. The timing never feels perfectly right. And while you wait for that imaginary moment, the one window that actually mattered keeps sliding shut behind you. Compare two people and let the gap speak for itself. Vance invests $300 a month from age 25 to 35, and then he stops completely and never adds another dollar for the rest of his life. He contributed $36,000 in total, and then he just walked away and let it sit. Della waits until she is 35 to begin, then invests that same $300 a month faithfully all the way to 65, a full 30 years without missing. She contributed $108,000, 3 times as much money out of her own pocket as Vance ever put in. And yet, when they both reach retirement, Vance is sitting on nearly $400,000, while Della has around $365,000. Sit with how unfair that feels. The person who invested for only 10 years and put in a third of the money still finished ahead, purely and entirely because his money had a decade more time to compound on itself. Those early years are worth so much more than the later ones that they bend the whole outcome. This decision seems small at the time, just a few $100s you could have spent. It is, without exaggeration, the most expensive thing you will ever choose to delay. The best moment to start was years ago. The second best moment is today, and today is the one you actually still control. What is really happening underneath that example is the part nobody feels in the moment. Every dollar Vance invested in his 20s spent 40 years growing, and in the final stretch, his gains were earning gains on top of gains, in a curve that bends sharply upward right near the end. Della's later dollars never got that runway, so they spent their whole life still climbing the slow, flat part of the curve when retirement arrived. This is exactly why waiting for the perfect salary, the perfect budget, or the perfect economy is a quiet trap. The amount you can invest today is almost always smaller than the amount you could invest later, and yet today's smaller dollars are worth dramatically more because they get the one thing later dollars never can, which is time. Start with whatever you have, even if it embarrasses you, even if it is $20. The habit matters more than the number, and the clock starts the day you begin. Number 9. Learn to say no to people, not just to things. Cutting your own spending is honestly the easy half of this. The genuinely hard half is the social pressure, and almost nobody warns you about it before it hits. There is the friend group whose entire rhythm runs on spending you quietly cannot afford, the dinners and trips and rounds that you are simply expected to match without complaint. Then comes the relative who asks for money that you both silently understand is never coming back. And underneath all of it sits a constant low hum of watching everyone around you upgrade their lives while you make the deliberate, lonely choice to wait. Saying no to all of that over and over is uncomfortable in a way that no spreadsheet ever prepares you for, because it is not about money at all anymore. It is about belonging. Yolanda figured out how to set real boundaries without setting fire to her relationships. She started suggesting cheaper ways to spend time with her friends rather than simply vanishing on them and letting resentment build. She stopped treating loans to family as an automatic reflex and started treating them as genuine decisions with real consequences attached. None of this was about becoming cold or stingy or cutting the people she loved out of her life. Every bit of it was about refusing to let other people's expectations quietly write checks against her own future without her permission. This is the part of wealth building that the spreadsheets and the calculators can never capture, and it might be the most brutal habit on the entire list. The wealth you actually keep is very often just the spending you found the nerve to decline, again and again, in rooms full of people doing the opposite. That nerve is not a personality trait you either have or you do not. It is a skill, and like any skill, it feels awful the first few times and then gets a little easier every single time you use it. Number 10, track your net worth, not your income. Income feels like the scoreboard, and it lies to your face constantly. Plenty of people pulling in big, impressive salaries are sitting one missed paycheck away from total disaster because a high income that gets spent completely is just a faster, fancier treadmill. The single number that actually tells you the honest truth is your net worth, which is nothing more complicated than everything you own minus everything you owe. It is unglamorous. It can be genuinely discouraging in the early years when the number is small or even negative. And looking at it forces you to face cold reality instead of the flattering story your paycheck whispers. There is a simple benchmark drawn from years of research into how everyday millionaires actually live. You multiply your age by your yearly income, and then you divide that by 10, and the result is roughly where a steady, serious wealth builder should be standing. Errol started tracking his real number every single month, even back when it was negative. Even when looking at it stung. Watching that one figure slowly climb did something for him that no budget had ever managed to do. It turned every habit on this entire list into a visible, almost addictive game, where each good decision nudged the number up and he could see it happen. His income barely changed across those years. His net worth changed everything about his life. Measure the thing that genuinely matters, and you finally stop letting yourself be fooled by the thing that does not. The research behind that benchmark uncovered something most people find genuinely surprising. A huge share of the millionaires they studied were not doctors and lawyers in mansions. They were ordinary people with unremarkable jobs who simply lived below their means for decades and quietly let their net worth grow. Meanwhile, plenty of the high earners they expected to be wealthy turned out to own almost nothing because everything they made flowed straight back out the door into the lifestyle their income could supposedly afford. That is the whole brutal lesson of this final habit in a single sentence. It is not what you earn that makes you wealthy. It is what you keep. And the only honest way to know whether you are keeping it is to look the number in the eye every month, no matter what it says. So, there they are. 10 habits, every one of them uncomfortable, every one of them a little brutal in its own quiet way, and every one of them part of the reason an ordinary person goes from absolute zero to genuinely secure. Notice that not a single one of them is clever. None of them rely on luck or timing or some edge that other people do not have access to. What they ask of you is simple and enormously hard at the same time. They ask you to do the boring, uncomfortable thing on purpose, over and over, while almost everyone around you chases the exciting thing and keeps wondering why they can never seem to get ahead. Remember exactly where this started? With that knot in the stomach and nothing left in the account after rent had cleared? The way out was never one dramatic, cinematic move. It was the slow willingness to feel a little discomfort today so that a future version of you could feel none of it. And once these habits are quietly running on autopilot, a deeper question almost always rises to the surface on its own. Where does all this money actually go to stay safe as you get closer to the day you finally need it? Because building the pile is one challenge entirely, and protecting that pile so it is still standing when you retire is a completely different one that far fewer people ever think about in time. That second challenge is the gap behind the gap, the foundation sitting quietly underneath every plan. And it is exactly why understanding bonds matters so much earlier than almost anyone realizes. They are the steady floor that keeps everything you just built from cracking apart when the market inevitably turns rough. And they are the most overlooked starting point for anyone who wants to think about retirement early instead of in a panic later. If you are ready to understand the solid base that all of